Good afternoon and welcome. It's great to see you back here again. I hope you've been having a wonderful time. I certainly have. And it's one of the highlights of our conference is the award ceremony and the opportunity to recognize some of the outstanding leadership that we have in campus sustainability. I'd like to thank our friends at Train for their sponsorship of the AASHE Award Ceremony and for this cool video that you just saw to honor our award recipients. And I'd like to welcome Bill Harris, the Vice President for Education Marketing from Train, to come to the stage at this time.
Thank you. Welcome. We are delighted to be here. And thank you, Paul and Jeff and Tony. I know you're out there somewhere. My team and I were dedicated to improving the environment of learning, and colleges and universities today face more challenges than ever before. I think you all know that. That's why you're here. Effective learning environments require healthy, comfortable facilities, and we believe that every campus can achieve green and sustainable goals in a fiscally responsible manner. With today's stressed operating budgets, you need relief, and energy is a great way to achieve that relief. Those savings can be turned back to the mission of education, which is core. Our goal is to support the mission of higher education as a corporate partner, and earlier this week, to support the need for energy conservation and sustainability on and off campus, Train introduced the new BTU Crew curriculum to engage students from all career paths in using their campus as a living learning lab. Our company is dedicated to the sustainability movement, and we are honored to sponsor today's award winners and celebrate as those who have made a difference on their campuses and welcome you to this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. As part of their sponsorship, Train is also doing a drawing to give away some Kindles, and of course you know AASHE now has publications available on Kindle. That was my plug. But Train has had some of you answer some questions. I'll give you the answers to the questions, and then I will make a drawing here. For those of you whose names I call out, your Kindle will be waiting for you at the bookstore outside. So let me begin. The answers to the questions are 120, the question is, the amount of energy each person in North America uses per year is equivalent to the amount of gasoline it takes to drive a car. How many kilometers? And the answer, of course, is 120,000. The energy that an average geothermal well transfer is approximately equivalent to is how many Hershey Payday candy bars? Well, if you did your math right, it comes out to 8,645.6 candy bars. And a 5-megawatt solar panel will remove enough metric tons of carbon production a year to be equivalent to removing how many cars from the American road? 1,715. And now I spin the band. And the first winner is Terry Grice from Hofstra. And the second winner is Bill Johnson, one of our advisory board members. How did that happen? And around they go. And for our third winner, is that right? 3? Okay. Make sure I don't draw too many of these. Our third winner is Michael, I believe it's C-O-L-U-E-D, something close to that, from Oswego, from SUNY Oswego, yes? Okay, we've got our 3 winners. Please pick up your Kindles out there. As many of you know, the AASHE Award winners are not only recognized here today, but are also recognized by our media sponsor, Sustainability Journal of Record. We'd like to thank our longtime partner, Mary Liebert Publishing, for providing this opportunity. So for more information about the award winners and their efforts, please consult future issues of Sustainability Journal of Record. Before we begin, let me thank all of you who applied for awards. I have to say, each year it gets to be harder and harder for our judges to deliberate and come up with their selections. And I want to congratulate all of you who applied. There's just so much incredible things going on out there. All of those entries will be appearing in the AASHE Resource Center in the near future. I'd also like to thank all the judges who struggled to make these difficult choices. You saw their names earlier, and they are listed in our program. It's now my pleasure to ask my longtime colleague and friend Jeff Chase, the chair of the AASHE Board of Directors and one of the founding AASHE directors, to come to the podium. Jeff is the Dean of Undergraduate Studies at San Diego State University and was one of the originators of the Ponderosa Project at Northern Arizona University. He's also the is the founding director of the Center for Regional Sustainability at San Diego State University. Oh, there he is, Jeff. Okay, Jeff, let's begin with a new award. This year, for the first time, we are offering the Faculty Sustainability Leadership Award. Would you please announce our winner?
I would be delighted. The winner of the inaugural Faculty Sustainability Award is Dr. Peggy Barlett, the Goodrich C. White Professor of Anthropology at Emory University. Peggy, would you come up? This award recognizes a faculty member who has worked to increase both the breadth and depth of sustainability education and demonstrated significant impact on individuals in the field in general. The review committee was unanimous in naming Peggy as the winner, saying that her work as a pioneer in education for sustainability has been groundbreaking. She has worked on her campus, on other campuses, and with hundreds of faculty members across the United States and from other countries to promote sustainability across the curriculum. She also co-edited Sustainability on Campus Stories and Strategies for Change, which has become a standard for anyone looking for ideas about how to affect change on their own campus. Her work began as a grassroots movement at Emory, and it has become an institution at Emory. She has served on national committees, and she has also pursued sustainability through her scholarship. I also want to add that Peggy, throughout all of her work, demonstrates unwavering commitment, openness, compassion, and grace. Please join me in congratulating Peggy Barlett.
Our next award is for the Best Campus Sustainability Case Study. The winner is the University of Alberta for their case study, Deliberation on Campus Sustainability. Would the folks from University of Alberta please come forward at this time? The project was a campus-wide, student-initiated series of events that engaged hundreds of students, staff, and faculty in creating recommendations for sustainability across the University of Alberta campus. The design of this series of dialogues was based on deliberative democracy, a set of theories and practices that have proven to be an effective method for engaging diverse community members in ways that encourage collaboration and individual empowerment. The recommendations developed by the deliberators were incorporated into a comprehensive final report that will inform sustainability planning across the campus, formally and informally, and will contribute to the upcoming campus sustainability plan. In addition to serving as a model for other campuses and having a large impact on the Alberta campuses, the judges thought this case study was also very relevant to the theme of this year's AASHE conference, with its focus on creating sustainable campuses and communities. Congratulations to the University of Alberta. In the lessons learned category for the case study that documents a project that didn't go as planned and offers important lessons that others can learn from, we affectionately refer to this as the OOPS Award. This award goes to Washington University in St. Louis for Getting to Net Zero, Lessons Learned from a Living Building Challenge. Would the folks from Washington please come forward? Oftentimes, stories of projects that don't go as planned can be really helpful, but campuses can be hesitant to tell such stories. Campuses willing to go out on a limb to try something new deserve credit for trying and are doing the rest of the field a great favor. In 2008, Washington University committed to the construction of a new building at its environmental field station, Tyson Research Center. This project, the Living Learning Center, would attempt to meet the rigorous Living Building Challenge, which includes, among other requirements, annual net zero energy operation. Post-construction building monitoring indicated that the LLC would not meet the goal of net zero energy without significant alterations, including changes to the building envelope, mechanical, and solar systems. In their case study, Washington U described the mistakes, corrections, and lessons learned that ultimately led to successful certification of the building in 2010 as one of the first net zero energy living buildings. Congratulations, Washington University.
The next two awards are our student awards. The first award is the Student Sustainability Leadership Award, and this year the award goes to Jonathan Glenn Cross from McGill University. Jonathan? Jonathan Glenn Cross has demonstrated outstanding and unique contributions to campus sustainability through his efforts to catalyze, inspire, and organize sustainability initiatives at McGill University. In 2008, he helped create the McGill Office of Sustainability, which now employs 3 staff and 10 interns. He now helps to manage that office. In addition, he spearheaded the first ever Rethink Your Curriculum Challenge. In addition, and the challenge asked students from 55 departments to assess the knowledge they've been given in their field with respect to sustainability. He also founded the McGill Food Systems Project, a collaborative initiative between students, professors, and McGill Food and Dining Services to integrate sustainability into the food's university procurement. All of these accomplishments are worthy of recognition. However, Jonathan's most notable achievement was the research, design, negotiation, democratic endorsement, and implementation of a $2.5 million fund for community-based sustainability projects at McGill. To date, the fund has already financed 45 projects, allocating nearly $1.1 million. Congratulations, Jonathan. This year's Student Sustainability Research Award winner is Annie Bezbashenko from New York University for her dissertation, Where Meaning Lies, Student Attitudes and Behaviors Related to Sustainability in Campus. Annie Bezbashenko's paper examines the gap that exists between people's perceptions of sustainability as an issue needing to be addressed and their level of actual engagement. The study captured qualitative insights into the inner workings of student attitudes and behaviors related to sustainability in college in order to discover meaning behind this complex attitude-behavior relationship, and also to help institutional leaders and policymakers understand how to cultivate settings that most effectively support pro-sustainability attitudes and behaviors. The judges were particularly impressed with Annie's rigorous review of existing literature and the overall quality of her research methods, including her extensive student, faculty, and administrator interviews. The judges felt that the impact of the research was extraordinarily high, especially in understanding how a culture of sustainability operates on campuses and the different ways to build social capital and trust and better understanding of behavior patterns that lead us to a more sustainable future.
Our final award tonight is also a new award. So congratulations to the University of Texas at Dallas for winning our inaugural Innovation in Green Building Award, presented in partnership with the Center for Green Schools at the U.S. Green Building Council. This award was created to provide recognition to a leading college or university that is transforming the built environment and creating living laboratories for sustainability. UT Dallas's submission featured a new LEED Platinum certified student services building on campus. The building finished $1.1 million under budget. It serves as a one-stop shop destination for all student service activities, housing 14 departments under one roof. The project showed strong community engagement and ideal space utilization, which made their application stand out among the others. The goal of the new building design is to improve departmental efficiency and student interaction. The most notable characteristics are floating terracotta shades on the building's exterior, which respond to the solar exposure and provide a unique energy-efficient shading strategy. The Student Services Building is both the first LEED Platinum certified building for the UT system and the first LEED Platinum higher education building in the state of Texas. Congratulations to the University of Texas, Dallas. I'd like to recognize some of our board members now, and there were two board members that were board members at the beginning of the year but have left the board during this year. I'd like to ask Andrea Ballesteros to come up and Mitch Tomasho. Are they here right now? This is without any warning. The service that our board provides us is incredible. Andrea came on as the first of our student representatives 2 years ago. Mitch came on in the past year. I actually had to ask Mitch to leave the board because I wanted to hire his wife, and we have a nepotism policy that didn't allow it, so I had to throw him off the board. It's tough things.
There was some misbehavior.
Yeah, well, there was the misbehavior thing. But thank you for your
That's so nice.
This year, AASHE reaches a milestone, a very important milestone. By the end of this year, we will have been in existence for 6 years. During those 6 years, we've been guided by an incredible board of directors. And by their own decisions, they created term limits of 6 years so that the board can be changing and dynamic like the world around us. Therefore, a number of our current board members, who were the founders of AASHE, they created this organization and overseen it for more than half a decade, will be leaving the board. Several of them were active on the board of EFS West, the organization that morphed into AASHE during 2005. This December, 8 of these founding members will be leaving the AASHE board. Will you please come forward as I call your name? Jeff Chase, Dee Dee DeLongpre Johnson, Monty Hempel, Bob Kester, Yolanda Moses, Matt St. Clair, Sherry Ton, and Ron Vanderveen. There truly is no way we can honor these visionaries that created this organization and guided it through ups and downs, but kept the vision and mission alive. And there's not enough time in the day for me to tell you how much I've learned from each of these leaders. Nonetheless, we want each of you to know that your work is most appreciated and that we treasure the time you spent making this organization the largest institutional member higher education sustainability organization in the world. I'd like to present you with a token of our appreciation. A clock that marks the time you committed to ensuring that higher education sustainability would be an enduring effort and not a flash in the pan. A clock embedded in the pine wood salvaged from the forests of Colorado where the trees were killed by beetle infestations. Infestations exacerbated by climate change. And an inscription on it that reads,
Give it back.
"Thank you for your leadership and dedication to the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education." On behalf of the AASHE staff and our membership, I want to thank you, give you our gratitude and our love for the sacrifices you've made and for all you've done for this organization and for the future of the world. Thank you all very much.
I told Paul I want to just make one quick comment. This is an incredible organization, and these board members are not only colleagues, they're friends. And the great thing about AASHE is it's an organization that gathers more friends every day. I am extraordinarily grateful to the fellow board members I've worked with, also to the staff at AASHE who are extraordinary, and also to the people behind the scenes who help put these kinds of events and help keep AASHE going. It's been wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Go AASHE, go sustainability.
I would like to ask Megan Minfon to please come forward. Megan is a student at Bellevue College in Bellevue, Washington, and many of you have met her as I have through this conference, and is a courageous and delightful young woman. I'd like to ask her to come forward. She'd like to say a few words about Tourette's syndrome and what it personally means to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Hey! Hi. My name is Megan Fan. I'm from Bellevue College in Washington State, and there's a lot of you. Wow, I'm nervous. I didn't realize how much people there are here. Hey! Today I'm here. I'm very honored and privileged to be up here to be an advocate for something that I've had my entire life. And I have, just to inform everyone that I have Tourette's. Who here doesn't know what Tourette's is? Or who wants to understand more about it? I'm pretty sure that's why I apologize if I never explained to everyone yet. And I'm sure a lot of you all are very concerned or scared or curious or I scared the heck out of you one time down the hall or something. I'm very, and I want to explain that what Tourette's is a neurological condition which I was diagnosed when I was 6 years old. And it was way worse back then, but now it's a little better, but still severe. I have outbursts and I have twitches and I say things that I don't mean to on purpose. And I have little control over it. I have some point of suppressing it, but I have little control over it. And I would just want to acknowledge my appreciation that everyone's very patient and tries to understand. I know that one of the people who who met me, who is now my best friend, who's at the AASHE conference with me, is Sophia. The first time she heard me, she would say, "Who does she think she is? She is so obnoxious." And I'm sure everyone had some level of that mindset. And I just want to tell you that I don't mean to. And if you have any questions, I'm not scary. I don't bite, not too hard. And if you have any questions about absolutely anything, I'll answer it, whether it's Tourette's or Bellevue College or sustainability fees. I'm here as an advocate for the earth, Mother Nature, animals, and I'm also an advocate for people who also suffer with Tourette's syndrome. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Bill Troop, the Provost of Green Mountain College and the Chair-elect of the AASHE Board of Directors, to come forward to introduce our keynote speaker. Bill?
Before I introduce our keynote, I want to echo something that Jeff Chase said. It's not only the board that makes this wonderful occasion and what AASHE does all through the year happen. It is Paul Rowland and an incredible staff he has that works harder than you can ask anybody to work to help us transform higher education. Let's give them a big hand. So now we have a real treat for you. Dr. Sandra Steingraber, biologist, poet, mother, and activist. She is a scholar in residence at Ithaca College with a BA in biology, a master's in English and creative writing, and a PhD in biology from the University of Michigan. She embodies the kind of interdisciplinary thinking we need to flip the script, as Majara Carter said, that we have been handed. Her book, Living Downstream, An Ecologist Looks at Cancer and the Environment, earned her international accolades. Recently, it has been made into a movie. Her books are personal, and the last two are about children and parenting in this age. Some years ago, she published Having Faith, An Ecologist's Journey to Motherhood. And just this year, Raising Elijah, Protecting Our Children in an Age of Environmental Crisis. She has won numerous awards, including Woman of the Year from Ms. Magazine, a Jennifer Altman Foundation Award for the inspiring and poetic use of science to elucidate the causes of cancer, a Rachel Carson Leadership Award from Chatham University, right here in Pittsburgh, and this year, a Heinz Award, also in Pittsburgh, for her environmental work. She has testified before the European Parliament and briefed Congress. Right now, she is particularly active in the controversies surrounding fracking in her hometown of Ithaca. But the last thing I want to mention about Dr. Steingraber is that she is a master of the surprising juxtaposition, the startling combination of unlike elements that jars us into new insights and motivates action. One of my favorite passages in Raising Elijah is about the common practice we have of withholding our knowledge of climate disruption from children so they can remain innocent for just a little while longer. She starts this. I decided it was time to sit down with my own kids and have the global warming talk. I had carried off the sex talk and its many sequels with grace and good biology. Surely, I told myself, I could rise to this new, albeit awful occasion. As a parent, I am tasked with the story about the birds and the bees. Am I not then tasked with the story about where all the birds and the bees have gone? Her description continues quite provocatively, but you will have to buy this wonderful book to find out how. Now, please join me in giving Dr. Sandra Steingraber a very warm AASHE welcome, after which we will see a clip of a film before she starts her presentation.
There was once a village along a river. The people who lived here were very kind. These residents, according to parable, began noticing increasing numbers of drowning people caught in the river's swift current. And so they went to work, devising ever more elaborate technologies to resuscitate them. So preoccupied were these heroic villagers with rescue and treatment that they never thought to look upstream to see who was pushing the victims in. This is a walk up that river.
Dr. Sandra Steingraber is an internationally recognized expert on the environmental links to cancer.
A cancer diagnosis is the beginning of an unplanned journey. There is a story behind each one. And this is my story. I left the lab bench for good and reinvented myself as somebody who writes about scientific evidence for the public. The disconnect between what we in the scientific community know about carcinogens and what cancer patients are told is huge.
One of the difficult things with PCBs is not just what you were exposed to yesterday, it's perhaps what you were exposed to 20 or 30 years ago.
Atrazine is the #1 or 2 weed killer in the world, and it is the #1 contaminant. There's almost no aquatic environment, including rainwater, that's atrazine-free.
It's not just the dose that makes the poison, and it's not just the timing that makes the poison. It's who you are that makes the poison.
When you have cancer young, your ability to kind of lay a plan is taken away. There are things in this world in which you need to presume longevity. We should become carcinogen abolitionists. These chemicals simply need to be phased out. When carcinogens are introduced into the environment, some number of vulnerable persons are consigned to death. I don't have time to put a happy face on cancer. Cancer is a serial killer.
Here we have a population of beluga whale where we find cancer on a regular basis. There's no other cases like that in the world.
Darnell's going to be famous. He's the first genetic male frog that actually completely turned into a female upon exposure to atrazine.
So you look at these animals and they actually also share the same environment we live in. You have to ask yourself, well, could that also happen to us?
A few weeks ago, the phone rang while I was trying to meet a writing deadline. It was the nurse in my urologist's office. She was calling to say the pathologist had found in the urine collected from my last cystoscopic checkup abnormal cell clusters. What am I trying to say here? Are you fine or not, Sandra? What's the end of the story? Well, I don't know. I believe our grandchildren will look back on us now and marvel that our economy was once dependent on chemicals that were killing the planet and killing ourselves, and they will think of it as unthinkable. An environmental human rights movement is the vision under which I labor and which may, if we all work together in concert, become a self-fulfilling prophecy. May it be so. It's an incredible honor to be here. I know that whenever speakers are flown across state lines and crowds are assembled, Copies of books are waiting to be signed. That a lot of work goes on behind the scenes to bring all this together. So thank you to the skillful events planners of the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Ed. And a special thanks to Megan. I believe so strongly in the power of autobiography to be a transformative element. I learned a lot about Tourette's syndrome just now, and I appreciate you being here. Thanks. Another special thanks to someone among us today who I'm sure whose name you'll all recognize, Peter Bardaglio. Peter was for many years my provost at Ithaca College. I was a Gypsy Scholar in 2003 when he took me in off the street and titled me Distinguished Scholar in Residence and gave me an academic home and encouraged me to be as interdisciplinary as I pleased in my research, writing, and teaching. And for someone who had previously spent a fellowship year at Harvard as a poet and then had moved to Cornell as a visiting biologist, that was an amazing opportunity to show all my colors. And more to the point today, Peter encouraged me to think about specifically the role that the university plays as an incubator, to use his word, for sustainable ideas and practices that we can then release into the larger world. Peter, I'm sure your transformational influence on me is shared by many here in this room, and it's a great joy to be able to publicly thank you at the podium. Thank you, Peter Bardaglio. We stand at a very interesting point in human history. On the one hand, we in the scientific community possess utterly irrefutable evidence showing us that our economic dependency on fossil fuels is killing the planet and killing ourselves. It's killing the planet because when we burn fossil fuels, of course, we fill up the atmosphere with heat-trapping gases. So that in the first 30 seconds here of my talk, I've walked us straight into the blockbuster topic of climate disruption, which is a calamity so painful and so unprecedented and so overwhelming that the mere mention of climate change causes otherwise thoughtful and compassionate people to turn away, to change the topic, to make a joke, or to deny its existence altogether. And yet, because I travel around a lot as a speaker on college campuses, I'm really interested in the fact that there are other unfolding and complicated calamities that we are able to find a language for, that we do have metrics for. So consider for a moment the stock market versus the plankton stock. I know more or less what the stock market's been doing for the last couple of weeks, even though I actually hold no stocks myself, and it's not something that I really need to be following, but it makes itself known to me through all the media that surround me. And I've learned very complicated things about credit default swaps and the role of the Greek banks in creating a banking system that is threatening now to topple the economy once again. And yet, I talked to a lot of students about this, and many of them actually have very complex and useful insights about our economic situation, even if they're not economic majors. And yet, when I ask what people know about our plankton stocks, even biology majors don't really know what the situation is. So let me just turn my attention to that for a second. 93% of the excess heat trapped by greenhouse gases is absorbed by the ocean surface. And that, of course, the ocean surface is the habitat for the whole world's plankton. When surface waters are warmed, that prohibits mixing by cold water layers to bring nutrients up from the deeper part of the ocean up to the plankton. There's an official name for that. It's called marine snow. It's otherwise known as fish poop that would otherwise travel down to the abyss of the ocean, but because of upwellings, this fertilizer can come up to the surface of the ocean and provide a growth medium for the world's photosynthesizing plankton. Plankton stocks are down 40% since I was born in 1959. And plankton makes up half the oxygen we breathe. And yet, how are our plankton stocks doing? The fact that they're going down 2% a year, is that a kind of stock market trend that we're paying attention to? This doesn't seem to be common knowledge among otherwise really highly educated and insightful people. Of course, there's a second problem with the ocean, which is that it's not just heat that's being absorbed by the ocean's waters, it's also the CO2 itself. And of course, that is converted into carbonic acid, which is now lowering the pH of the ocean. It's already dropped demonstrably. When the ocean becomes acidic, calcium carbonate goes into solution, and that will spell the end of anything with a shell, from clams to coral reefs. And most zooplankton represent the larval forms of things with shells, so that the basis of the entire marine food system now is in trouble and will almost certainly trip massive species extinction, which some biologists believe is already underway. And that is entirely attributable to what's happening right now in our oceans. And yet this kind of knowledge is not well understood. We don't wake up every morning and read in the newspapers or on the ticker that goes below our computer screens about how the transformation of the exchange rate between carbon dioxide and carbonic acid in our ocean systems is doing today. So these are complex systems about which we don't have much of a language. We also are failing to talk publicly about fossil fuels as a feedstock for the stuff that surrounds us, for our materials economy. It's not common knowledge, for example, that the credit cards that we carry around in our wallet, which are made of PVC, have as their starting point natural gas. That's what we begin with when we make polyvinyl chloride. It's not well known that anhydrous ammonia fertilizer, which is the stuff that allows our industrial agricultural system to continue as it does, these vast monocultures of soy and corn and wheat, which contribute to so much of our junk food economy and the obesity epidemic. All that is made possible by a fertilizer called anhydrous ammonia, and that too has natural gas as its starting point. Pesticides and solvents likewise are petroleum-based, meaning natural gas being the vaporous form of oil. And yet there's not a kind of common knowledge that when we look at the vinyl siding on a house, that we're actually looking at a drill bit going into the ground to conduct fossil fuel extraction. So that's on the one hand, as I started off saying, on the one hand, this. And my English professor always said, if you have it on the one hand in your essay, you always sooner or later have to raise the second hand. So on the one hand, we are confronted with utterly irrefutable evidence showing us that our economic dependency on fossil fuels is killing the planet and killing ourselves. And on the other hand, we are engaged in increasingly desperate and extreme attempts to get the remaining fossil fuels out of the ground. With all the easy-to-get supplies already used up, we're spending more energy and using more toxic chemicals to extract the difficult-to-obtain supplies at far greater environmental costs and risks of catastrophe. So the old idea of just a few years ago that we're now, at peak oil or beyond is no longer the case. It's clear that the fossil fuel industry has very many clever ideas to get carbon out of the ground that was previously thought to be inaccessible, and we're not going to run out of this anytime soon. So we're actually standing at a crossroads where a decision has to be made about what to do. There are 4 forms of extreme fossil fuel extraction. One of them, of course, is mountaintop removal, and the other, drilling for oil at the bottom of the ocean. The Alberta tar sands would be the third, and Naomi Klein is doing a wonderful job helping us find a language to talk about this, and Naomi Klein and others. And this, of course, I'm referring to the pipeline from Canada to the Gulf Coast, which allows a kind of allows the tar in the soil beneath the boreal forest of northern Canada to be turned into gasoline, of course destroying the forest along the way. And then the fourth is fracking, which does to the bedrock of our nation what mountain top removal does to the tops of mountains, namely blows it apart to get at the carbon trapped underneath. What fracking is, essentially, is the use of millions of gallons of water mixed with tens of thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals that are then used as a club to shatter the shale formations a mile or two below our feet, which allow bubbles of natural gas, methane, to flow through these fractures and up the borehole of a gas well. This technology was developed in the West and is now being imported here to the Northeast, and it can't be practiced without industrializing and creating, building out a network of pipelines and roads and condensers and compressors. So fracking is now going on in 32 different states, all the way from California to the pipeline that's being built under 13th Street in Manhattan, and is transforming the land use, transforming, it's a game changer, to use the words of the energy industry. And because of the abundance of natural gas and the lowered cost, now petrochemical refineries are being sited here in the Northeast, so that anhydrous ammonia and PVC plastic and pesticides and solvents and all the things that I wrote about and talk about in the film Living Downstream are going to become more abundant and become cheaper. It's the opposite of sustainability is what's happening. So that's the backstory of what I want to say today. And my self-appointed task is to ask now where the university is located in all this. We live in a country that has no national energy policy. And in that void, the business plans of the world's largest and most powerful corporations, Exxon, Halliburton, Shell, Chesapeake, their business plans become the de facto energy policy of our nation. And those plans involve ever more toxic, extreme carbon-based extraction, which will shatter not only the bedrock beneath us, but the landscape here at the sunlit surface. So, university sustainability, as it's traditionally thought, has two prongs. One is the kind of operations side of the university, so that the ecology of the university itself, from the food that's served at the dining halls to the water that's flushed down the toilet, that we think mindfully about best practices that can give us, for example, carbon-neutral colleges. And then there's the curriculum and research side of the university that asks how we can think differently, how we can, for example, bring ecosystem services into a full cost accounting in a business model. That is what we teach in our classrooms of our sustainable campuses. But what I want to ask, and I really do ask this as an open-ended question with you, what if we thought about the university as an opinion maker and as a shaper of public policies, and return the university to that kind of time-honored role that it once had, for example, during abolitionist years, when colleges like Berea College in Kentucky were not only bringing in liberated slaves as students in violation of Kentucky laws, but also playing a role as college presidents, as the college itself, in making its opinions forcefully known, injecting its opinions forcefully into the debate at the time when our economy was once ruinously dependent on slave labor. What if the university now inserted itself forcefully into the conversation about the ruinous dependency of our current economy on fossil fuels, and did so very directly? So I'm locating this talk kind of at the intersection of the university's traditional mission and public policies. And there's a couple of reasons that prompt me to do this. One of them is a pair of emails I received in the last couple of weeks from two mothers of college-bound, high-achieving high school teenagers. And the first mother wrote me to say that her son had just come back from Ithaca College as a prospective student visiting, and he was swooning with enthusiasm, and what really impressed him was the fact that sustainability was, quote, the thread that appears to be woven through the whole curriculum. So her son was very excited about coming to my college, and of course that makes us all happy up at Ithaca College. But then I received another email shortly after from a Westchester mother who asked how the battle against permitting of fracking was going in New York. You might know that, unlike Pennsylvania, we have a temporary moratorium on fracking put in place by our last governor that's about to expire. And during the moratorium, various kinds of scientific investigations and study was supposed to have been carried out to tell us whether or not we should permit this or prohibit this form of energy extraction in New York. And we're now in the process of moving forward with it. It appears to be fast-tracked. Regulations have been released last month. We're in a 90-day comment period. And if we end up prohibiting fracking, it will be because something incredible happens at the 11th hour. And so this Westchester mother wanted to know, so how's it going up there? Because if fracking is going to be permitted, my children aren't going to go to an upstate college. I'm going to send them to Princeton or somewhere else instead. And she wasn't so much interested in the sustainability curriculum that we offer at both Cornell and Ithaca and all kinds of other wonderful upstate colleges. But she was worried about her children driving on the roads from Westchester to upstate on these rural, twisty back roads that we have when they become filled with 18-wheeler fleets hauling hazardous material. She didn't want her kids on those roads, period. So I began to think hard about what it means for Ithaca College and for all colleges here in the Northeast to create these amazing incubators for innovation, both in our operational side of our universities as well as in our curriculum, when outside the window on the highway that runs past are fracking trucks carrying carcinogens and radioactive materials back and forth to the gas wells. What does it mean that the actual flowback fluid is actually used to de-ice the roads in New York? And that's already going on. The toxic flowback from the gas wells of Pennsylvania is brought to New York. We have something called beneficial reuse, which allows us to use it to de-ice the roads, including 96B, which runs right past the incubator of sustainability, Ithaca College. So we're living through a time when we're about to go backwards to this very destroy the earth, to blast fossil fuels out of it, organic agriculture and sustainability be damned moment in history. And where's the voice of the university directly on this issue? At the State Assembly last Thursday, I gave invited testimony as a biologist on the environmental health effects of fracking and was part of a group of members of the public health community to deliver a letter to Governor Cuomo from 250 physicians and members of the public health community, including New York's pediatricians, saying to cease and desist, that we were pursuing a dangerous and wrong-headed plan here for our energy future. There are other letters submitted by groups of organic farmers. There are letters submitted by fishermen and hunters. There are letters submitted by winemakers pointing out that the smog that almost certainly will accompany all these diesel trucks and the volatile organics coming off of the 62,000 wellheads that are planned for upstate New York will create ground-level ozone that will interfere with the growth of grapevines. But where is the letter from college presidents? What's missing, I think, from the public conversation about our missing energy policy in the midst of a moment when our nation is blazing a trail down a suicidal, homicidal, and ecocidal direction by pursuing onshore drilling, it's really the voice of the universities now, I think, that we need to hear from. Certainly the corporate interests are forcefully involved. They have no problem spending much of their working time at giving testimony and being involved in Albany and in the halls in Washington, D.C. Environmental groups and advocacy groups are also there. But the researchers in our universities, the students of our universities, other than encouraging our students to go out and commit civil disobedience, right now we see service to the community as a kind of sidelight mission of the universities. So that if a professor wants to go give testimony based on research in Albany, that's not necessarily something that counts toward tenure. It's not something that's considered a kind of primary mission. So the result then is that we can do research as academics about things like fracking, but it happens after the fact, right? So there are many rural sociologists now who are gearing up to write grant proposal so that they can study the fracturing of the rural community once fracking comes. And we have some evidence right here from Pennsylvania that once the drilling companies come in, violent crime goes up, drugs go up, rape by an unknown assailant goes up. So we're going to study this after the fact, after it happens. But what if our university sociologists were involved before it came? And what if that were seen as part of what part of their job description? We know that the kind of pollution associated with gas drilling is associated with some of the most expensive medical problems that we know about, such as preterm birth, which is a leading cause of disability in this nation, associated with asthma, leading cause of school absenteeism in this nation. It's associated with cancer, breast, bladder, and lung cancer. And so where is the analysis that shows us that here is the amount of people who will die if we blanket the Northeast with smog caused by all these gas drills and their attendant trucks and the compressors and the condensers? Here is the amount of money that will be added to the Medicare and Medicaid costs. Where is the economics? These studies could be done. They could be done out ahead of time by our university researchers and pushed into the conversation, but I haven't seen that happen yet. In other words, the university should be good at taking the existing knowledge that we have about complex systems, whether economic systems, health systems, ecological systems, and create a knowledge base that before we go down a terrible path can be used to show us another and better way. Because essentially what we have here is an overwhelming but simple problem. We have a design problem. We need desperately to redesign the energy system and our materials economy to get us off of fossil fuels. And the best science shows us that we could do this in 20 years if we could cut our energy consumption by half. And yet, we're pursuing this other path without all of the knowledge that we all have in our respective disciplines really playing an active role in blazing the trail that we need. So, for myself, and I'll try to answer the what to do question for myself, what I feel like I try to offer this situation as a science writer is two things. One is to help my readers fall in love with the places that they live and to realize that our lives exist in a kind of exquisite communion with the ecological world that we inhabit. Our blood plasma is 65% water, and that comes to us from the rain and from the groundwater under our feet. With every breath, we inhale a quart of atmosphere, and so on. And this way, I want people to feel invested in, for example, honeybees, which turn out to navigate in ways that can be sabotaged by nanoparticles from diesel exhaust. So what will happen if the Northeast is blanketed with emissions from gas drills and honeybees can no longer find the flowers they need? How will that affect us? That's what I'm interested in thinking about and writing about. And I'm also interested then in making visible for my readers the landscape below our feet, which is the quarry that the drill bits are going after. It's talked about in Exxon commercials just like a bunch of rocks down there. But I'm really interested in making it, in sort of pulling back the surface of the earth and allowing my readers to look down there. So I'm now steeped in this field called geomicrobiology. because it turns out that these rocks beneath our feet are actually alive. They're ecosystems. There are thousands of species that inhabit them. Geologists call this deep life, and we now believe that there's more life held in deep geological strata by biomass than there is here at the sunlit surface. In fact, there may be more life held in geological strata than there is in all the world's oceans. So the Marcellus Shale, which is what sits below us here in Pittsburgh, is not just a rock, it's a kind of subterranean coral reef. And when we shatter it and pump it full of biocides, we are altering element cycles in a way that we have little understanding how that affects us here. In fact, it may be, according to some geologists, that the cycling of elements by these archaea and different bacteria forms that occupy the geological strata may play a role even in climate stability. So I'm really interested in taking out of the soundproofed scientific literature the language and the knowledge that we have about deep life and writing about it in a way that's accessible. I'm also interested in creating human narratives of nobility and heroism for our time. I'm interested in thinking about abolitionism as a time when people had to rise up and do bold and noble things. I'm interested in thinking about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and the French Resistance and the ability of people in times of crisis to take incredible risks and to get in touch with essentially heroism. Because I think that the two narratives that we now have around the environment aren't working. One of them, which is the so-called doom and gloom method, is simply tell people over and over again how bad it is. But that does not have the effect that we all hope, right? People just turn away. The other is to downplay it all and to encourage people to do small things like carry their recyclables dutifully out to the curb, knowing that that won't keep the ice caps from melting, but hopefully that people will kind of ramp up from there. But people recognize the disingenuousness of the disconnect between being asked to do small things at a time when what's required is very large and bold and transformative things. So I think the truthful thing to do is to encourage people to do something heroic. And I'm really interested in our universities playing heroic roles, as they once did during the time of abolitionism, for example. So, so you heard I won this Heinz Award this year, and one of the things that I have decided, it comes with this sort of kind of an amazing cash prize, $100,000, which is more money than my net worth, I'm quite sure. And so it so happened when I got the word about the Heinz Award, I was in Utah doing some exploratory research on fracking in Utah, and suddenly Tim DeChristopher, who is now imprisoned for his role in disrupting the gas and oil leases at the base of Arches National Park, he was going to be sentenced. And so I kind of left the field and went to his sentencing and heard him say, before he was hauled away by U.S. Marshals, I was actually outside the courtroom, and then, you know how it works, people are inside and they funnel out what's happening to the folks who are standing vigil outside. And he said, this is what love looks like to the judge. And it was an incredibly moving moment for me, so that when I got the phone call about the Heinz Award, it didn't take me too long to decide that what I needed to do with the $100,000 was to devote it to the struggle against fracking in New York. Knowing that $100,000 is not much for the oil and gas industry, but in the hopes that it would open up a critical space in our culture by being autobiographical, by being public about my decision, to embolden others to bring what they can to what I see as the human rights struggle of our time. So, so it's been really interesting, because now this is the first chance I've had to kind of announce this here at a big gathering. But as word has gotten leaked out, you know, I've had people show up on my porch with jars of jelly, and with a pair of socks. They wanted to give me a pair of socks, and a winemaker gave me 3 bottles of his best vintage, and I got 2 bouquets of flowers from 2 different farmers and so forth. But the conversation that happens in those moments is that how can we do bigger things, truly transformational things that can stop harm before it is started. And the conversation that was begun with the imprisonment of Tim de Christopher can kind of be carried on. So again, I'm going to close with a short reading, but I want to ask again, as an open-ended question with you, where can the university position itself in this human rights struggle, in this moment in history, whether you live in a place that is being affected by fracking, or the tar sands pipeline is going to run right through your county, or you live in Appalachia where mountaintop removal is going on. All of us in every state now are being, we're seeing the ecological devastation of renewed, frenetic, onshore fossil fuel extraction that's being practiced as though we had all agreed that this was the plan. So where does the university fit into all that at this moment? All right. Here's the reading I want to close with. Of course, whenever I get to this point, it's always a choice for me. Either I could read some biology or I could do some poetry. And a lot of people ask me, how does that make sense, biology and poetry? And actually, I think they have a lot in common. Both biology and poetry about the mystery of being alive. But whereas biology attempts to solve the mystery, poetry simply says, behold. So I decided poetry would win out here. So I've got a poem for you. But there's a lot of science in it, including this field of study that I'm now immersed myself into, geomicrobiology, this idea of deep life in the bedrock below our feet. So that the biosphere is not just on the surface, it's held in deep geological strata. The Earth itself is alive, and I mean that in a very biological way, right? Not in a kind of Gaia hypothesis way, but it's literally alive with metabolizing creatures. Some of them don't have electron transport systems, and so they actually send nanowires into the mineral substrate around them and transfer electrons into the mineral substrate, and that's part of how they alter element cycling. Some of them have arsenic instead of phosphorus in their DNA. All right, so the poem is called Marcellus. Marcellus is the name of the shale that's beneath us here and also beneath me in upstate New York. It was named for the village of Marcellus in upstate New York at a time when, in our history, when all of upstate New York, which was being taken from the 5 tribes and given to veterans of the Revolutionary War as a kind of, instead of cash after the revolution was over, these places were named with classical names, thus Ithaca, Syracuse, Marathon, and Marcellus. Marcellus being a Roman general who was very clever and very good, but ended up perishing on the battlefield at home because he had no exit plan. I thought that was resonant for our situation. Marcellus is also a character in Hamlet. He's the guy who says there is something rotten in the state of Denmark, and he leads Hamlet away from his father's ghost and encourages him not to pay attention to a message we later learn in that tragedy he should have paid attention to. I also thought that was resonant for this poem. And then Lady Gaga and Allen Ginsberg are in here too, so it's kind of a big poem. Marcellus. Marcellus, below us, Marcellus, below us, Marcellus, tell us, who named you? Older than fishes, older than spinal cord and bone, and the green day of trees, older than atmosphere, than pollen dust, than seeds. Bedrock of wishes, tears, grief, subterranean coral reef alive with microbes, nanowires, electrically conductive hypersaline fires. You are a biosphere. Marcellus, our cellar, Marcellus, unlike us, fissured and fossiled sarcophagus of squids and sea lilies, ego and id, foundational, fundamental, elemental, the whole periodic table in you, uranium, radon, strontium, barium, chromium, lead, Marcellus, home of the dead, toluene, mercury, benzene, brine, 500 million years thick, arsenic, the river Styx, in you, Eurydice, Hades, Moloch, Charon's boat, Hades, Moloch, ransom note. Marcellus was deserving of the name given him who waged war and gained fame, for the sacking of Syracuse, for the Battle of Gaul, only to lose to the enemy and fall at home, no exit plan. Some say your success was embellished. General Marcellus, tell us, who named you the Sword of Rome? Marcellus, a private Saudi Arabia below our feet. Marcellus, a prolific monster, says Wall Street. A sure thing shall play, place your bet. Marcellus, a minor character who leads Hamlet away from his father's ghost. Something is rotten in the state of here. Sign this lease and let's make the most of it. Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers. Enters now Mark Antony, breaking bread with Bobby Kennedy for what it's worth, for what it's worth. Jealous? Et tu, Marcellus. Hades, Moloch, Charon's boat. Hades, Moloch, ransom note. Marcellus, who are we? Drill syringe, Derek vein, junkies argue how many carbon atoms can dance on the head of a pin. Marcellus, tell us who we are. I hear the trucks coming. They're not far. Their plan is to reduce you to rubble, and there is no Hubble telescope for you, Marcellus, and no 24-hour spill cam for us. Marcellus, tell us who you are. An ancient underground parking lot, a box inscribed with the name Pandora, or a scroll on which is written the names of us all. Holy the rock, and the fissure, and the salt, and the diatoms fall. Holy the unfractured bedrock. Holy the wall between you and us, Marcellus. Holy the passageway, holy the hall. Holy the 58,000 unmapped and abandoned wells. Hell, I know you're down there. Are you an augur? Are you a voodoo doll? Mom always said, don't blow up the basement. Hades, Moloch, Charon's boat. Hades, Moloch, ransom note. Marcellus, keep your methane to yourself, please. I don't want you in my blood. Don't want your disease. Let me love you from a long way up. Here on the sunlit surface, holy the water, holy the cup. Thank you. Yeah, if you have. Why don't you acknowledge them and I'll answer?
We do have time for probably 2 questions. There is, back by the camera, a microphone. If there's someone with a question, could they go there quickly?
Thank you, Dr. Steingraber. My name is Lorraine McCosker. I work at Ohio University in Environmental Studies. And you came to Athens several years ago and spoke to us about your Living Downstream book. So gas extraction has come to our community, and I spoke earlier to Dr. Orr, but it's become a very impassioned issue for many of us. We live in a small community that has a legacy of coal extraction. So now we're making a revival. We have a wonderful local food industry. We have business entrepreneurs. And suddenly we have gas. We have Utica shale. And so the 2 issues just last week were, one, that the Bureau of Land Management put lands up for sale in our national forest upstream from our university. We were able to galvanize and had letters, and our president wrote a letter to the BLM asking them not to do that because it would impact our water supply. And then we had a company come from West Virginia offering asking for leases in our county. So this has been going on. It's becoming a critical issue, and it will impact our region dramatically, and the economics, and the students who want to come to Ohio University, and the professors who want to stay there and live there. Our quality of life will be dramatically impacted. Can you share with us how we can awaken our faculty and how we can awaken our administration to the impacts, and perhaps put pressure on the Board of Regents and trustees and our governor?
Okay. Well, thank you for that. You gave me the opportunity to point out that the fracking story has tentacles in many places that you might, even if you don't live over the Marcellus Shale, you may be affected. For example, part of my research this summer was in the state of Wisconsin. All of the silica sand that's being used in the fracking operations, and the sand goes down with all the fresh water and the chemicals so essentially, all right, so first of all, you build these horizontal drills, right, that go a mile or two through the shale sideways, and then you blow it up with explosives, and then into the rubble at very high pressures, up to 15,000 pounds per square inch, you pump water and biocides to kill off all those organisms I mentioned that live down there, but also slickeners to reduce friction so that the gas bubbles trapped there can actually flow back up the hole. But to hold the cracks open, because you're a mile or two under the ground and the lithostatic pressure would quickly close those cracks up, you need silica sand of a certain kind that can only be found in Wisconsin. And so all throughout rural Wisconsin now, farmers are leasing their land for mining of silica, raising the risk for silicosis in the people who live in those communities. So even in, the game-changing nature of shale gas is so vast that even places without gas itself are drawn into this. And Ohio, where is in an unfortunate position because it's going to get a double whammy. Not only is it the eastern Ohio over the Marcellus, so there will be gas drilling if it's permitted, but also here in Pennsylvania and New York State, we do not have the kind of geology that allows for deep well injection. So 40 to 70% of that fluid that's pumped into the rubble under high pressure comes back up with the gas. The rest of it is permanently, we hope permanently, entombed into deep geological strata. And we have to then dump all those gallons of waste, right? Which is also radioactive now, because up with the gas also comes the chemicals that are held into the shale, some of those that you heard me name in the poem. These elements like radium and strontium and mercury and so on. So all this, we're talking about 4 to 9 million gallons of water per wellhead, 62,000 wellheads planned for New York, at least as many planned for Pennsylvania. That's trillions of gallons, and we have no official plan to dispose of it. Pennsylvania tried running it through its sewage treatment plants. A bunch of people, including people here in the Pittsburgh area, got bromine poisoning and so forth. And so the new plan is to take it to Ohio and to put it into deep well injections in Ohio, which for reasons I'm not entirely clear, you can do that in Ohio, whereas you can't do that in Pennsylvania and New York. So of course more diesel trucks filled with very hazardous and radioactive materials will be traveling from New York State and Pennsylvania to Ohio and injecting that into the ground. Now here's where the risk of earthquakes comes into play, because with that amount of pressure, when you're injecting, you're essentially creating interstitial fluid around rock formations, and you can increase the risk of earthquakes. Actually, in the New York Times this morning, there's a science piece describing how that works. And so you're not only in Ohio getting the dangers from fracking itself, but you're also on the receiving end of all of the stuff. But this is the Achilles heel, as far as I can see, of fracking, how to dispose of trillions of gallons of radioactive toxic waste. If Ohio closed the door to that then it really couldn't go forward here in New York and Pennsylvania. And so I would like to see the colleges and universities of Ohio rise up. I would like to see this association itself, AASHE, take a stand on this and write a letter saying, no, this can't happen. And we really need economists in this, right? Because it's all being sold as a jobs and economic savior, when in fact the numbers show that, first of all, these are very toxic jobs. People who work in the oil and gas industry have a mortality rate 7 times more than average, more than twice as much. Their mortality rate on the job, the chance of being killed on the job, is twice what a police officer is. And so, you know, so it's not the kind of job you would want your students or your children to ever have. But also, obviously, sooner or later the gas is going to run out. Those jobs disappear. That's what non-renewable means. And so, for all these reasons, we need economists to be weighing in on this. And certainly, college presidents to talk about the problems of student and faculty recruitment in a place where, especially when so many of our liberal arts institutions are located in rural areas, people move there because they can, you know, go for a bicycle ride on a Sunday afternoon and live in fairly pristine places surrounded by organic agriculture and so on. And if that's all going to get turned into an industrial zone, and you're going to be breathing urban-style air but without the conveniences of living in an urban area, then how does faculty and student recruitment work under those situations? So this is really a time for the universities in Ohio to find their voice on this, but also I hope you would get an assist from organizations like AASHE as you move forward. That was a long answer. I'll try to keep the next one quick.
We have time for one more question.
Great, thank you. Dr. Steingraber, thank you so much. My name is Dominic Frangillo. I'm with Cornell University, and as you know, Cornell is a pioneer in research on some of the carbon equivalent impacts of hydrofracking. I'm also a council member in the town of Caroline, which just received a petition from half of all registered voters requesting that our town ban hydrofracking, the largest petition in our town's history. We also are very involved with supporting young people as you mentioned, civil disobedience and engaging on this issue. So my question is, how can higher education, what are the pathways for higher education to engage with communities on this issue and also support and engage the students who see this as the hydrocarbon extraction as the great moral issue of their lives?
Yes. Well, this is the question I brought before you that I hope we can answer together. From what I've seen with both Cornell and Ithaca College, frankly, is way too much silence on the part of universities, who should be out front in saying that this is, you know, absolute lunacy and flies in the face of what we know has to happen, right? And so it doesn't take too many English professors to say that, you know, look, it's just a metaphor to say that this is a bridge, fuel to the future. What if it's a wall? You know, and then turn to the economics faculty, you know, in your university, to look at the numbers and to show that, in fact, the biggest disincentive right now toward investment in solar and wind is the development of natural gas, because all the Wall Street investment dollars are now flowing to gas, and we're drying up the others. And so, the kind of to get beyond, to be the counterforce to the advertising and the propaganda that don't have good science, that don't have good economic numbers, is, I think, the role that the university can play. But I would like it to be less timid. I would like the universities to not simply engage in research after the damage is done. But we're at this amazing moment now when this new form of fossil fuel extraction that has been going on in the West, where almost nobody lives, kind of quietly, is now being brought to the East. Yeah, it's already shredding Penn's woods here in Pennsylvania, but it's only getting started. I mean, there's a lot of damage that could be prevented. It hasn't happened at all in Pennsylvania, in New York State. The nation-state of France just last week decided to ban fracking, and part of the rationale was all the evidence for ruin that is coming out of this state right here in Pennsylvania. So Nicolas Sarkozy, hardly a progressive voice in the world, I would say, said last week that they would not be practicing hydrofracking in France until it could be proven not to massacre the landscape. And so permits were revoked. And so that kind of international associations of scholars, of geologists, of economists, of college administrators can all move forcefully in this direction. And that means taking on boards of directors, right, and trustees. That means taking on alumni and using alumni magazines to actually further sustainability education. So to take the message that we're teaching students and take them to our alums in alumni magazines, use those magazines as an opportunity to talk about what a truly sustainable energy system would be and why your college is taking a stand against this very regressive form of energy, because they're not mutually compatible. I think before we send our students out to practice civil disobedience on the front lines, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? What more can we do in the role that we're playing here? What risks are we willing to take? Because our students shouldn't be, I spent 12 days in jail as a graduate student on the front lines of, at that time, at the University of Michigan, it was Defense Department research in the biology department. And I felt that professors were in a really cozy position objecting to Pentagon research in the university and writing petitions, but when it came to really putting their bodies on the line, I was kind of left alone. And I don't know if that's how Tim DeChristopher feels right now or not, but I think there's a much bigger role that the university can play, and I'm really interested in thinking historically about this. What role did it play in the suffrage movement? What role did it play in abolitionism? This is, I'll close with a statement that I always, it's kind of my signature line that I always use when I'm, as a speaker on college campuses, when I'm asked, what can I do by students? And I refuse to answer that question, because I think that everyone has their own skill set and their own passions, and whatever those are, they need to bring them to this particular historical moment. But what I do say is that, look, we're all members of this great human orchestra. It really is now time to play the Save the World Symphony. You don't have to play a solo, but you do have to know what instrument you play and find your place in the score. And that is true for our universities as well as for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, for your words of inspiration, your words of thoughtfulness, and for the challenge you've given all of us, and for laying down the gauntlet. Thank you. I have a few logistic announcements here, and as I begin making some of those, I would like to ask that the AASHE staff please come onto the stage. We've had some problems, I know, and I know some of you have had to suffer through some of the problems with our shuttle buses out to the Radisson, and we apologize for that. Between a Steelers game, a visit from President Obama, and a Penguins game today, we've had all kinds of road closures that our shuttle drivers have been trying to deal with. We will be back on schedule, and we'll be leaving at on the top of the hour and the half hour this afternoon. So I just want to assure you that we are dealing with that. We've been in communication with the bus companies and tried to fix that. But I apologize to you if you felt stranded from time to time because the shuttles haven't been running as planned. I've asked the AASHE staff to come on stage. I have a quick announcement before I tell you why. Midwest Power Shift has asked me to announce that anyone interested in climate justice, the Midwest Power Shift 2011 conference is coming up October 21st to 23rd. The deadline to register is this Sunday, October 16th. Registration fee, $35. For more information, go to midwest.wearepowershift, all one word, .org. I think we're going to have to put you in 2 rows. This is the AASHE staff. A few minutes ago. Now, 45 minutes ago, they were scattered all over this building working on all kinds of different things, and I sent out an email, go to the ballroom now. And they're here, and I'm thrilled. I want you to see the AASHE staff for a lot of reasons, but mainly so we can thank them. This is the group that does all the work that makes me look good and makes Bill think that I actually work really hard. But that's okay. I love what they've been doing. I want to appreciate all of them, but I especially want to ask Danielle to come over here because Danielle Ferris, our events manager. She has made this conference what it is. All of us work at it, but really, Danielle is our leader when it comes to putting the conference together. Cheers to Danielle. Thank you. This staff really is a magnificent staff, and I know many of you have communicated with them previously and today, and previous days here at the conference, and will be tomorrow. I just have to be very honest in saying that I generally try to, when I talk to large groups, stay pretty much on the intellectual side and have a tendency to do that, maybe be a bit of an administrator. But I got to tell you, I love this group. I love them. And I mean that from the depth of my heart. They have a commitment, and they have the capacity to help all of you change the world. So once again, thank you to the staff. Well, I hope this has been great for you. I am looking forward to seeing some of you. I know a few of you are going to be leaving tonight. I hope it's not too many of you. But I want to thank all of you for the effort you have made to be here, the effort you've made to care about sustainability, to care about what's going on in higher education, what's going on in your campus. And I want you to know that we appreciate the choice you made to be with us and to help move this forward. We're here to help, and we will continue to do so. I wish you a very good evening, and if you're leaving, I hope you travel well till we meet again in Los Angeles. Thank you. I'll see some of you tomorrow.